Hey, hi, Avigna.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to Performance Seminar. So, how are you doing this evening?
Pretty good.
Good, good. All right, let me just double check that hold on here. Let me double check that our live stream is working. Yeah. All right. So, here's our live stream is going. And let me go ahead and get that in our seminar page. And I think there's one other person on the program. Kayla. Okay. So, we can go ahead and get started actually. And if just don't be startled if Michaela comes in here.
Okay.
Um, all right, so I think you probably know the procedures here. So make sure that you've got your original sound ready to go on your um, device through Zoom, and just let us know the. Can you tell us the name of your piece and the composer, and then we can hear you play? Okay.
Okay, so my name is Vigna and I'm going to play Sonatina Andante and it's by Clementi. And I'm going to play it memorized.
Oh, all right, nice. I'll share the music just in case, so we can see in the video, but um,
Okay.
you can't see. You're looking at your piano. Okay.
Okay, let me flip the music around. 1 second. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, nice work. Okay. Great job, Olivia.
Thank you.
Okay, so this was sounding very smooth, very confident here in your performance. Um, what was something, I guess, thinking on that performance, what's something you are particularly happy with about your playing of this?
So I'm happy that most of it was pretty smooth and I played the correct fingerings. I also did better with the dynamic contrast in most areas with the crescendos and decrescendos.
Hmm. Yeah, no. So I got a lot of different dynamic levels there.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be too extreme. Um, but yeah, so I thought overall, yeah, it sounded very solid. Um, it wasn't just that the notes and the rhythms were all there. It was you had a nice sense of shaping some of these dynamic areas. Um, and it was a nice overall you got a lot of good legato um connections in a lot of these places. So it was very nice and smooth sounding, very polished. Nice. So can you tell us about um your journey learning this piece? So
Okay.
what was is there something that you found particularly difficult as you worked on this piece?
Okay, so this is my second seminar for this piece. My first one was like just me learning the rough notes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was learning this for the first time, it's like I've never played trills before. So I
Hmm.
struggled a lot with the trills, and the only way to practice that is to go really, really slowly. So it was kind of annoying, but eventually I was able to get over it, and I can play trills a little bit faster now.
Hmm.
The other thing I think that was kind of questionable was I wasn't sure how to do dynamics properly with this piece. And so my first seminar, I ended up being really, really quiet during the dolce parts because I thought sweetly means quietly as well. And then I learned more about it, and it's more about phrasing. And as one phrase goes on, I have to crescendo and decrescendo apparently. So I started trying to add that in for each of the slurs.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I could hear a lot of nice natural kind of phrasing of that. So that definitely came out. Yeah, and I was gonna say, so your dynamic levels were nice, and yeah, it's kind of it's really a little ambiguous at the beginning. So perhaps, I mean, you can choose, right, what what you feel is right dynamically there at the beginning. Um, yeah, so and it sounds like you've worked on all of those particular um concerns. So it was sounding terrific. One thing that we might try, and this is totally like a further
Mm-hmm.
detail. So something that you'll see, and this is true more in as we get more into the 1800s. Now Clementi lived into the 1800s,
Yeah.
um, but this marking that I'm about to talk about. So when you see something like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of an odd thing going on with the these are called, like, sometimes people call these hairpins, where you've got a little crescendo and then a little diminuendo right after it.
Mm-hmm.
Um so this gets you see this more and more in the 1800s. And even like in some like really extreme examples, you see it like on a single note on the piano, and you're like, how can I have
Oh.
um so fairly recent, I can't remember the name of the researchers who were writing about this. um but they were reading some writings on performance and things from the 1800s, and what they sort of found reading through all these guides to playing and performing these, in the 1800s, was that they said these hairpins were about expression rather than dynamics, if that makes sense, right? So
Okay.
instead of just meaning, now, so like dynamics are kind of an ingredient, but what
Yeah.
they essentially said it is, in this particular case where you have a little moment like that, right? What the composer is conveying and how they would perform it is like it's a little at the middle, right? Whatever is at the middle of those
Mm-hmm.
is a moment you kind of want to emphasize a little bit
Emphasize.
more. Does that make sense? And now there's a sforzando in this particular piece, which is interesting. You don't necessarily always have an accent or something at the end. But what I want you to think of that as is, instead of just a dynamic thing, you're trying to kind of almost like linger a little bit on that note that's in the middle, right? So you're kind of like getting ready, pushing towards it. And then with the diminuendo, you're kind of easing back into wherever you were. Right. Does that make sense? So it's almost
Yes.
like you're stretching out the flow of the music a little bit to highlight that. Um, and so the reason I say that is actually because of the sforzando. And if you're going to actually, so think about it, like if you're playing this and you actually want to try and do a little bit of give a little bit more weight to that sforzando note, you're going to have to take a little bit more time when you attack it, right? So
Yeah.
think of it. Can you try that? Let's see. I guess we can start right on that. Can you start right on measure 13?
Yeah.
Right. So experiment with that a little bit. Try that out. Mm-hmm. Try that one more time. Yeah, and you can even think of like slowing down a little bit as you get towards it and then speeding back up with the diminuendo. So just a tiny bit, right? So
Or that was too
mhm.
loud.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. So does that make sense? And so one
Yeah.
along with that, so one thing I want you to try,
Mhm.
and I know this is tricky with repeated notes. When you're doing the finger changes are great. I want you to see if you can get a little bit more of a sustained sound on those repeated notes rather than them starting to sound separated, starting to sound staccato, right? Because they're not marked staccato.
Yeah.
And that's kind of tricky. So what I want you to pretend is as you're doing the finger changing was great. See if as you change your finger, let me see if I can verbalize this correctly, right? So as you change your finger, right, instead of lifting all the way off the key, see if you can try and keep each finger kind of in contact with the key. You'll let the key up, but try it. Think of not letting your fingers detach from the key until you've got that next finger there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that sounded a little better, right? So what almost like what I want you to imagine is that if you right, we can't do this on piano, right? You can't hold a key and crescendo through the hold, right? You can't hold a note and crescendo through the note, right? All the other there's the I somebody had a meme a while ago that made the rounds where it was like if a pianist is bullying you, tell them to play this, and it was just a whole note with a crescendo on. So other instruments can do this, right? We can't. But what I want you to imagine, right? This is the situation. So imagine that you're holding that C out until you get to the E flat, but you're kind of using that finger switch to crescendo it a little bit. Does that make sense? So pretend like
Yeah.
it's a held note that you're trying to crescendo. Try it that way too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's the right idea. No, the first time you did it, it sounded good, right? So, in other words, these are all just kind of strategies to get to a little bit more sustained sound through the repeated note, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
right? And that goes for all of the repeated kind of three groups of notes, right? That might not be they're not staccato, but and you're not doing finger switch. But like, so if we back
Yeah.
up to like measure 9, right? Right, notice what's happening through those repeats. So through that measure there's a crescendo, right? So you're
Yeah.
crescendoing up to that, right? So same idea, imagine that you're really but you're trying to get a consistent crescendo going. Yeah, right. Do you feel a little bit of the difference there?
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
kind of
almost
more
like
legato.
yeah, and sometimes it helps to like just like feel like your hand is a little bit heavier, like without being loud, just feeling like it's a little bit heavier and spongier as you repeat those notes. Yeah, that was sounding better. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So those are just two little polishing things. But I have a feeling so you might come across the hairpin situation in other pieces. Remember that's
Yeah.
sort of like it's almost like a tempo warp thing as well as a dynamic
Hmm.
moment. Um, there's just this moment of like a little bit of extra intensity towards the middle.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so I might hang out here for a little bit and wait for Michaela, but you did terrific. So thanks for your performance this evening. I'll see you next time you play. Okay, thanks. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.